my friend. Welcome to this podcast on the Daily English Podcast channel. If you ask, 1,000 people from all over the world to practice their English by talking about their lives, you don't just end up with a massive pile of grammar exercises.
Oh, definitely not.
Right. You inadvertently create this raw, highly detailed map of the universal human experience.
Yeah, it's actually incredible.
I mean, we are talking about everything from the visceral smell of wet asphalt after a childhood rainstorm all the way to that soul-crushing, anxiety-inducing sound of a 6 a.m. alarm clock. Welcome to today's deep dive.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to get into this.
Same here. So we have this fascinating stack of source material in front of us today. Conversational transcripts, audio clips, textbook excerpts, and they were all originally designed for language learners.
Right, but we aren't looking at them for vocabulary.
Exactly. We are looking at what happens when human beings are stripped of complex jargon and just asked to explain the core timeline of their own lives.
It is so revealing. I mean, when you remove the pressure to sound overly intellectual, people get straight to the emotional truth of things.
Yeah.
These transcripts, they chronicle the entire arc of human development in such a profound way.
And we're going to chart that entire timeline alongside you today. We're moving from the pristine sensory memories of childhood straight into the absolute mortification of the teenage years.
Oh boy.
Right. And then crashing headfirst into the reality of adulting, and finally exploring how that whole journey radically changes the way we view our own parents. So, okay, let's unpack this.
Well, it's funny that adulthood feels so chaotic because when you look at how we start out in these transcripts, our brains are initially wired entirely around order.
Order and predictability, right?
Exactly. And intense sensory input. A lot of the scientific literature embedded in these sources, like the Macmillan textbook excerpt, points out this fascinating neurological quirk.
The smell receptors thing?
Yes. Humans have about 220 million smell receptors. And unlike other senses, scent actually bypasses the brain's typical relay center.
Oh, wow.
It goes straight to the olfactory bulb, which is directly wired to the amygdala and the hippocampus.
Yeah.
And those are the areas that process emotion and memory.
So it's essentially a biological shortcut to the past.
That is exactly what it is.
That perfectly explains the stories we found in the transcripts. Like, there's this woman named Sarah talking about her grandmother's house.
I loved that one.
Right. She doesn't just give a vague summary of visiting. Her memory is hyperfixated on the smell of warm, homemade chocolate chip cookies every single Sunday.
Yeah, the details are so vivid.
She remembers the exact feeling of standing on a wooden chair just to reach the counter because she was so small. And then there's Eric, whose entire concept of childhood is anchored around Friday pizza night.
Oh, the raw dough memory.
Yeah, the specific tactile memory of his dad buying raw dough, the two of them stretching it out and covering it with extra cheese.
Notice the granularity there, the warm dough, the extra cheese. But it's not just food that creates these baseline memories. No, we also see how a child's broader environment essentially calibrates their entire nervous system for what the world is supposed to feel like.
Oh, like the city versus country comparison?
Right. In one conversation, a speaker details growing up in a chaotic metropolis. So their baseline for normal is constant traffic jams, honking, sirens, and this hum of perpetual urgency.
While another speaker grew up in this totally isolated country town where the nearest supermarket was like 20 kilometers away.
Exactly.
So their baseline is immense quiet, growing their own vegetables, wide open space. But I have to wonder, are our childhood memories basically just sensory time machines?
Sort of, yeah.
It's baffling to me that we don't remember the massive geopolitical events of our youth. Like, ask me what was on the news when I was 8 and I'd draw a complete blank.
Same here.
But ask me what Saturday morning pancakes with maple syrup tasted like and I am instantly transported.
Well, there's a very specific survival mechanism behind that. The sources, specifically from Easy English, use a great concept to describe these sensory details. They operate as psychological anchors.
Anchors. Okay, I like that.
Think about the macro world from the perspective of a 7-year-old. It is terrifyingly large, complex, and totally out of their control.
Right.
Their brain simply cannot process geopolitical news. So, to prevent constant anxiety, the brain latches onto the physical, repeatable safety of a routine.
That makes so much sense.
The smell of Sunday cookies or the quiet of a country morning literally wires a child's nervous system to understand, hey, you are safe here. It creates their entire definition of stability.
So we're essentially building a sensory fortress.
Yeah, exactly.
But that fortress becomes a prison eventually, right? Because you can't stay in the cookie baking phase forever.
Unfortunately not.
You have to break out and figure out who you are without those safety nets. Which brings us to what has to be the most chaotic era of human development, adolescence.
The great breakout. The sources spend a lot of time on this transition. Adolescence is a time of immense social categorization and psychological upheaval.
It really is.
You leave the safety of your family unit, and suddenly your survival depends on figuring out where you fit to a pretty brutal social hierarchy.
Oh, high school is brutal.
Teenagers try on distinct stereotypes, almost like armor, the rebel, the joker, the academic, the sporty kid.
Yeah, and we actually found a fantastic, really funny example of this in a conversational transcript between two learners, Mark and Sarah, talking about their teenage years.
Well, that transcript was gold.
It was so relatable. So they're talking about their awkward fashion phases, and Sarah shares these incredibly vivid memories of her goth and punk phases.
The black clothes.
Yeah, entirely draped in black, wearing heavy, dark eyeliner, spiking her hair up to look intimidating.
But the best part was her secret.
Yes. Behind closed doors, she admits she was secretly obsessed with boy bands like NSYNC and the Backstreet Boys.
Ah, that's amazing.
She had their glossy posters plastered all over her bedroom walls, but she couldn't tell anyone. And then Mark opens up and talks deeply about his struggles with body image.
Which is so common.
Totally. He felt deeply uncomfortable in his own skin, convinced he didn't fit in with the popular sporty kids because he preferred art and drawing.
What Mark experienced there is some developmental psychologists actually call the imaginary audience.
Imaginary audience.
Yeah. When you are a teenager, your brain convinces you that everyone around you is scrutinizing your every single move.
Oh man, I remember that feeling.
Every flaw, every outfit choice, every misspoken word feels like a life or death scenario on a public stage.
Which makes early public failures feel absolutely catastrophic.
Oh, for sure.
Like that one story from the Talk Sophia source. A 12-year-old student had to give a presentation to their class about dolphins.
Oh no, I know where this is going.
They were so paralyzed by nerves that their brain just short-circuited, and they confidently kept calling the animals elephants in front of everyone.
That is brutal.
It's that absolute sinking mortification where you just want the floor to open up and swallow you whole so you never have to face society again.
And mixed in with that intense social anxiety is the first real taste of adult responsibility, which usually arrives without any instruction manual.
Right.
The transcripts highlight the shared trauma of the first job. Mark actually brings this up too. He recalls working for minimum wage at a local pizza place.
Oh, right, the 50 pizza.
Yes. A customer called in an order for 50 pizzas for a massive party.
Yeah.
And then simply never showed up to pay for them or collect them.
Wait, can we pause on the cringe factor of all this for a second?
Sure.
Because we love to look back and laugh at the dark eyeliner, the boy band posters, or the terrifying class presentations. But, well, wasn't that actually incredibly necessary?
I mean,
Like, if Sarah didn't try to be a terrifying punk rocker, or if Mark didn't have to navigate feeling alienated, how would they ever figure out who they actually were outside of the identities their parents handed them?
if we connect this to the bigger picture, you are hitting on the fundamental biological purpose of the teenage years.
Really?
Yeah. Testing boundaries isn't just a phase. It is the necessary, often painful process of psychological separation.
Wow, okay.
You have to actively reject the old rules to write your own. And it comes with collateral damage.
Like what?
Well, the sources talk about how this is the exact time when childhood friendships painfully fracture. Like another speaker, David, discusses his childhood best friend, Tommy.
Oh, the guys who drifted apart?
Right. They were inseparable from age 5 to 15, and then they just drifted. Different interests, different crowds. It's a harsh foundational life lesson that people come and go, prepping you for the isolation of the adult world.
Because the training wheels eventually do come off.
They do.
The teenager working the pizza counter moves out, goes to college, gets their own place, and slams right into the ultimate unspoken reality check.
The daily grind.
The unrelenting grind of adulthood. Mark and Sarah talk about this too, the psychological whiplash of leaving home.
It is intense. They describe that initial intoxicating rush of total freedom.
Yeah, I can eat whatever I want.
Exactly, which is almost instantaneously followed by the crushing wave of homesickness.
Suddenly, the fact that mom cooked dinner every night isn't something to take for granted. It's a monumental administrative task you now have to perform forever.
Forever.
The mundane struggles of adulting are just so universally baffling. It's the sudden realization that doing your taxes, paying the electricity bill, figuring out how to make your own doctor's appointments, it's all entirely your responsibility.
And there's this strange, beautiful paradox of adult freedom that comes up in Mark and Sarah's conversation.
Oh, I know what you're going to say.
You can look around your messy apartment, realize you are the supreme commander of your own destiny, and you use that absolute power to actively choose a bowl of cereal for dinner.
Yes. Cereal for dinner is the ultimate adulting paradox.
It really highlights how exhausting the mental toll of a daily routine can be.
Absolutely.
The Easy English source captures this perfectly by analyzing the morning routine. They describe the sound of a morning alarm clock, not just as a noise, but as a big attack on my soul.
A big attack on my soul. That is incredibly accurate.
It's a small electronic beep, but it signals the immediate resumption of infinite responsibilities.
Yeah.
And from the moment that alarm goes off, many adults fall straight into the morning scroll trap.
Oh, grabbing the phone while you're still horizontally tangled in the sheets and just spending 5 minutes staring at social media.
Yep. And in those critical first 5 minutes of consciousness, you are feeding your brain a curated highlight reel of everyone else's fake perfection,
Right.
comparing it directly to your very real, very messy life. The speakers note how this leaves people feeling entirely drained and restless before their feet even touch the floor.
Totally.
Their minds feel cluttered. 1 minute you are waking up in a neutral state, and the next minute you are convinced you are the only person on earth who doesn't have their life completely figured out.
It's like waiting your whole childhood to finally be handed the keys to the car.
Only to realize that along with the keys comes the burden of paying for the expensive gas and the insurance.
And you're the one who has to figure out the navigation, and it turns out you're just stuck in endless soul-crushing traffic anyway.
That is the perfect analogy for why this phase of life feels so heavy.
It really does.
The adults in these conversations repeatedly express feeling overwhelmed. The macro world is just as chaotic as it was when they were 7, but the automatic safety net is gone.
The sensory anchors of cookies and routine.
Right, provided by parents, it's just gone. Adults have to manufacture their own peace. They have to make highly intentional choices to recharge.
What does that look like?
Whether that's deliberately carving out time to watch a series, sitting silently on a balcony with a cup of tea, or just lying on the sofa staring at the ceiling to let the nervous system reset.
And under that heavy daily weight of paying rent, doing laundry, and eating cereal for dinner, something else quietly happens.
The dreams.
Yeah. The massive, brilliant childhood dreams we all start out with begin to shrink. We see it everywhere in the transcripts.
We really do.
One kid was dead set on being an astronaut, but eventually realized the math was just too complex.
Yeah.
Another wanted to be a veterinarian because they were deeply obsessed with their golden retriever, Biscuit. Another wanted to be a rock star. But then reality sets in.
The transition from limitless ambition to daily survival is deeply emotional.
It's sad, honestly.
It is. One of the sources, Speak English with Class, spends significant time breaking down the battle between dreams and practicality.
What did they find?
They point out that adulthood rarely kills your dreams in one sudden dramatic explosion. It's a slow, quiet accumulation. Imagine your childhood dream is a large open window in a room, letting in all this vibrant light.
Okay, I'm picturing it. And as you get older, adult responsibilities, the bills, the fatigue, the expectations of your boss, they start piling up like cardboard boxes in front of that window.
Exactly. Box by box, it slowly blocks out the light until one day you almost forget the window was ever there in the first place.
That is a terrifying metaphor.
And the most insidious part is how we justify it. The transcripts introduce this concept of apprehension, basically a quiet, constant worry about stability.
Right.
But people rarely admit they are operating out of fear. Instead, they dress their fear up in a suit and tie and call it being practical.
Wow.
They play it safe for so long that they actually mistake their fear for their personality.
Yeah.
They start saying, oh, I'm just a realistic, practical person, when in reality, they are just terrified of risk.
So they end up living what the source calls an inherited life.
Yes, a life designed by societal expectations rather than one they actively chose.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though.
Okay.
Is the typical inspirational advice of just follow your dreams actually incredibly toxic?
Toxic.
Well, yeah. Because, as one of the speakers rightly points out, follow your heart is a lovely poetic sentiment, but my landlord doesn't accept poetry.
Mom, that's true.
Right. He has very practical, very consistent opinions about my rent. You cannot pay the power bill with sheer aspirations.
This raises an important question, and the source actually validates that exact tension.
They do.
Yeah. The goal they advocate for isn't to recklessly quit your job, abandon your family responsibilities, and jump blindfolded into the unknown.
Thank goodness.
The profound lesson here is about internal self-awareness. Taking the safe, practical route to ensure you have a roof over your head isn't a failure. Slow, microscopic progress toward a dream isn't a failure.
Then what is?
What is dangerous, they argue, is the act of abandoning yourself completely.
Yeah.
It's about finding a sustainable relationship between your practical needs and your aspirations so they are no longer sworn enemies.
Going back to our driving metaphor, fear is definitely allowed to be in the car with you.
Sure.
It can even sit in the back seat and complain about the route you're taking, but you cannot let it hold the steering wheel.
I love that.
And when you finally grasp how incredibly messy it is to navigate all of this, the adulting, the compromised dreams, the delicate balance of fear and ambition, it causes this massive paradigm-shifting realization regarding the people who raised us.
It is the defining moment of maturity. You finally see your parents as three-dimensional human beings, not just as permanent fixtures in your universe.
Exactly.
There is an incredibly touching segment from Luke's English podcast where the host, Luke, decides to sit down and record an interview with his mother, Gil.
That was a beautiful episode.
He has this sudden, urgent realization that he needs to ask her about who she was before she was his mother, before it's too late.
And Gil's memories are absolutely incredible to listen to. She casually talks about growing up playing in post-war bomb sites in the UK, dealing with strict food rationing as just a normal part of life.
Just completely normal to her.
Right. Then she talks about being a teenager in the 1960s, completely and totally obsessed with the Beatles.
Naturally.
And she admits, with this brutal teenage honesty, that she and her friends totally ignored the wartime generation's immense trauma. Because they just thought old people going on about the war were boring.
Which is such a universal, egocentric teenage perspective.
Right.
We are all the center of our own universes at that age. But Gil is also remarkably open about the weight of her regrets. They look over her old school report cards, and she expresses regret for not applying herself academically.
Yeah.
She explains how she was deeply conditioned by a very Victorian ideal to be a people pleaser. Her generation was explicitly taught that children, and especially young girls, should be seen and not heard.
She discusses the incredibly low career expectations placed on women of her generation. It never even occurred to her to have personal ambition beyond being a good wife and a mother.
A completely different world.
But she doesn't just dwell in the past. She contrasts her experience with the immense, almost impossible pressure placed on modern women, like her daughter-in-law, who are socially expected to juggle an intense, high-powered career and flawlessly manage a family at the same time.
It's a lot.
It really is. But listening to them talk made me think, isn't it strange that our social etiquette dictates so much of what we know about the people closest to us? We'll sit with our parents on a Sunday afternoon making a cup of tea, watching television, but it feels somehow inappropriate or too awkward to just pivot and ask, "Hey, Mom, did you ever feel like an absolute failure when you were in your 20s?"
It is strange, but it's a deeply ingrained human habit. As Gil points out in the interview, when you are together, you're usually just living in the present moment, busy enjoying each other's company.
Right. You don't want to ruin the vibe.
Exactly. You don't want to disrupt a perfectly pleasant afternoon tea with heavy existential interrogations. But there's also a profound element of developmental maturity at play. As the old saying goes, youth is wasted on the young.
We just lack the necessary hindsight.
Precisely. A teenager or young adult simply lacks the lived experience to see their parents as anything other than invincible authority figures.
That's so true.
It isn't until we have our own unexplainable aches, our own deep anxieties, and our own 3 a.m. adult crises that we realize our parents likely felt the exact same terror. The major takeaway from Luke's realization is vital for anyone listening. Do not let the frantic busyness of the modern world or the slight awkwardness of breaking the normal routine stop you from asking your family those profound late-night questions while they're still here to answer them.
So, if we trace this incredible line all the way back through the sources, we start with the pristine, neurologically wired safety of Grandma's kitchen and the smell of cookies.
The sensory anchors.
Right. We inevitably get pushed out of that safe nest into the mortifying goth phase chaos of our teenage years, desperately trying to figure out who we are.
The rebellion.
We crash head-on into the exhausting, messy reality of the morning scroll trap and paying utility bills, all while trying to stop the cardboard boxes of responsibility from blocking the window of our dreams.
It's quite the journey.
And ultimately, we realize that everyone, even the parents who seem to have the entire world perfectly figured out, is just flying blind trying to figure out how to navigate the same crazy ride.
Which leaves us with a fascinating philosophical question to consider.
Oh, I'm ready.
We spend so much of our adult lives feeling entirely drained, feeling cluttered, and feeling immense guilt for not being the perfect, highly productive adults we imagined we would be when we were kids.
Yeah, the pressure is immense.
But if adulthood is really just a complex extension of that awkward, boundary-testing teenage phase, if we are all still just figuring it out as we go, maybe the ultimate sign of maturity isn't having a perfectly clean apartment or a flawless tax return.
What is it then?
Maybe the most mature thing you can do today is simply forgive your younger self for those mortifying mistakes and forgive your current self for still choosing to eat cereal for dinner.
I think we all needed a reminder of that today. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive through the hidden human stories within these transcripts. Keep learning, keep asking your parents those awkward, beautiful questions, and above all, stay curious. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.